Bueno, vamos a arrancar la próxima charla. Este es Nathan Vella, fundador de Capi, una empresa canadiense, que hizo varios juegos, entre ellos Swords and Sorcery. Y el futuro Super Time Force. Así que los dejo con Nathan.
Hello. Just wait for the slide to come up here. The screens are flickering. Well, it's almost there. Get there. Is anybody else having a seizure? Okay. All right. Gracias. Okay. Last talk of the day. Thanks everyone for sticking around. Super appreciate it. So I'm going to try to buzz through introductions as quickly as possible because they're usually the most boring, and even though I love to brag about myself and my company, it kind of makes me look like an asshole, so I will skip that part. So I'm Nathan Vella. I'm the co-founder and president at Capi. I'm also one of the partners in Indie Fund, which Ron is also a partner. Give you a little bit of information about Capi. We started making games together in 2003 as a group of people who had never made games before. We met at the local IGDA chapter and spent 2 years making mobile games. That's not smartphone games. That's not iOS or Android. That's like old Java 64K cell phone games. We did that for 2 years, and after 2 years we actually made some cool stuff. And so we decided in 2005, along with the help of a lot of lies and some good pitches, to get a contract, and we started the studio in 2005. Fast forward to now, we are 22 people working out of Toronto, Canada. We made our first original game was a game called Critter Crunch. It came out on like almost all of the platforms ever. We also made a game called Might and Magic Clash of Heroes with Ubisoft. And most people won't know this, but we made 16 mobile games before that that none of you have ever seen, ever played, or ever even heard of. So then after Clash of Heroes, we made Sword and Sorcery in collaboration with our good friends at Super Brothers and the musical genius Jim Guthrie. That was by far our most successful game to date. It sold over 1.5 million copies, which sounds silly even to me. Then we went on to help our good friend John Mack make Sound Shapes. Right now we're working on a game called Super Time Force, which is a ridiculous action platformer where you can rewind time and play alongside all the past versions of yourself. And we're also making a game inspired by roguelikes called Below. Okay, so that's who I am, that's who Capi is. Let's get into this. But before we do, I'd like to make a few kind of like quick points. Number one, I am not an expert at all. I'm still learning as I go. But we've released a whole bunch of games on a whole bunch of different platforms. And we've spent a lot of time in the studio thinking and trying our best to figure out the idea of promotion. So this talk is a mix of opinion, of our personal experience, and the discussions that I've had with developers, many of whom have already been speaking here. And predominantly, I'm going to be speaking towards people making small, independent games, ideally original ones. So how many people here are actually making an independent game right now? Just hands up. That is pretty radical. I really like that number of hands. So also want to make sure that you know, I'm not really going to be talking about a specific platform, not just mobile, not just console, because I think the ideas of promotion in general are kind of universal. It doesn't matter if you're promoting a game on iOS or if you're promoting it on console. There's still certain things that have to happen, and I'm going to try to cover some of them. Now, if you're making a free-to-play game, unfortunately, I don't think some of this stuff applies because free-to-play is its own entirely different beast, and I have no idea how it works. So before I start getting into kind of the meat and potatoes, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what promotion actually means to me. And so to illustrate that a little bit better, I'm going to use a quote from Alexander Bruce, who made the wickedly amazing and wickedly successful game Antechamber. And he asked the question, how often do you look up more information on something you've never heard about before? And this is kind of the question that promotion answers. So to me, promotion is predominantly about grabbing a piece of somebody's brain and latching on and residing there until release. It's this kind of constant reminder or ticking that stays inside of their head and reminds them that, hey, this game is cool, and when it comes out, I should probably buy it. It's about communication. It's about explaining visually or through video what your game really is. It's the means by which we communicate or we explain why our game is worth buying, and in a weird kind of pseudo way, how much our game is actually worth to the consumers. And perhaps most importantly, if it's actually worth their money. It's also very important for me personally, and I think for a lot of other people, that promotion is entirely different from traditional marketing. To me, traditional marketing is based on retail methods used by disc games, and it always involves spending money on something. Buying ad space, buying TV time, buying a giant studio where you can turn it into a theme park to promote your terrible theme park first-person shooter. And also, I think it's very important to mention that, to me, promotion absolutely requires honest discussion. It has to be you being truthful about your game. So another clarifying point, and get through this pretty quick, is who is promotion for? And I personally believe that promotion is half for the people who are going to buy your game and half for the people who run the platform where people will buy your game. And this might sound a little weird, so let me explain it super quickly. Basically, if you can convince Microsoft or Apple or Google or any of the big guys, Valve, that your game is cool, it increases the chances that they're going to plaster that game right on the front page, and that's probably the best promotion you can possibly get. So if you do cool promotion, interesting promotion, unique promotion, there's a good chance that somebody at Valve or somebody at Apple might see it. And if they see that really amazing trailer or that crazy set of teasers or that beautiful poster that you made for your game, somebody posted on Twitter, they're going to be just as excited as a gamer would be, but they actually have the power to kind of initiate promotion within the platform. And really, when it comes down to it, platform promotion is kind of the best. It's the most direct, and you're right, the consumer's already right there ready to buy. The last thing that I kind of want to clarify is, if you don't start with something great, or as Ron put it so eloquently in his talk, something special, promotion can only help you so much. So I always use it as a one level up. So basically, if your game is pretty darn good and you have great promotion, people will believe that this game is great. If you have a game that's kind of okay, you can probably convince people that it's a pretty good game with really good promotion. If your game's kind of crappy, it's only going to get to the point where it's kind of a little bit not crappy. So the idea that, like, oh, I have something that I'm not really happy with it, but maybe I can convince people that it's great, is never really going to work. So starting with something special, as Ron puts it, is very important. So here we go, meat and potatoes. This is kind of the core of the talk. Promotion has, in my opinion again, two sides of the same coin. It has the calculated side, and it has the creative side. Both of them require a metric shit ton of time, a whole bunch of effort, but they are both mandatory. If you want your game to succeed, you need to succeed at both sides of this coin. Another way to look at it is half of promotion is pure science. It's known, it's a commodity. And the other half of it is artistic, it's creative, it's moments of genius, and it's expression. So let's start off with the first side, the calculated side, the scientific side. The reason why I kind of call it scientific is because this is the stuff that everyone else has already figured out. You don't have to spend any time trying to figure this out. You can kind of go through and see point after point, which is what I'll actually do right after this, of the things that you just kind of have to do. Some of them kind of suck. Some of them take more time than others. A lot of it is kind of a bit bland, but you have to do it if you want your game to succeed. And all of this is kind of based on meeting expectations. Meeting the expectations of players or consumers, meeting the expectations of the press that are going to be another vehicle to reach the players or consumers, and the expectations of the platform that you're going to put your game out onto. So here we go. You must have a good title. Now what is a good title is a very kind of subjective thing. So that's why I always say the first part of a good title is something that sounds cool to you. But there are other things that a title must have, such as if you Google it and there's already a game named your game, or there's already a game with similar words that's extremely popular, don't name your game that, because no one will ever be able to find it. So ensuring that your game title doesn't have title competition within Google, or, as I'm also showing with device 6, YouTube, which is a massive search engine for people interested in games. If you have competition there, you just have to think about renaming it. So the example that I'm using is Simogo's new game, Device 6. In the middle, and you can't see it at all, is a Google search, and it's all Device 6 when you type in Device 6. And the other one is a YouTube search. When you type in Device 6, 3 of the first 4 are Device 6 videos. Next, you need to have a really clear website. It's pretty self-explanatory. People need to be able to find out where to see pictures, where to see videos, what's going on with the game, what platforms are the games coming to, in a way that doesn't require them digging through or trying to figure out way too much. I mean, it's basic web user experience right there. You need to provide easy access to your assets. So that's screenshots, that's promotional arts, that's a synopsis or summary of the game's description. So on the left, that's the Super Time Force website. We use WordPress because WordPress is super easy, super quick. We can update it frequently. We can test stuff around with it. We can embed anything we want. And on the right is the Do Press Kit, which is the press kit utility that the guys from Vlambeer made. And the reason why you need easy access to assets is because, apologies to press people, I don't mean this really badly, but there's so much on their mind and their attention is so fleeting for your game that you need to make sure that they don't actually have to spend too much time trying to find what they want. If they want screenshots, they should be able to click on one thing and see screenshots. If they need to dig through your website, or you don't have them laid out in an easy way, or they're not at full resolution, they're going to have to go digging. And there's a really good chance that if they go digging, they're going to go digging on Google Image Search, and there's a 99.9% chance that they will pick images of your game from 7 months ago when it was in alpha and looked like garbage. I highly recommend people use PressKit. There's the website for PressKit in case anybody wants to put it down, or you can just search for PressKit. It might come up, I'm not too sure. But it's basically takes 30 minutes. And it's all laid out perfectly for you. And press and for finding people who are like-minded in a very quick way. And it's also an amazing way to start conversations about your game, even before your game has come out, with people who are potentially interested. So with Facebook, with Twitter, especially with Twitter, responding and being active is extremely important. If it's just a mouthpiece that just kind of spouts out, games coming in 6 months, games coming in 3 months, no one's going to pay attention, no one's going to follow, and it's not going to create any type of attraction to your game. So for us, Twitter was extremely important with Sword and Sorcery. It started out as a gameplay feature. It was not something that we had intended to use as promotion, but after the game's release, became one of these key components of the game's promotion. So here's a little slide. I've never actually shown this to anyone ever. This is the first time anybody actually, and you can't see it, which makes it even better. But that's a graph of all-time tweets coming out of Sorcery, using the hashtag Sorcery. Most of them come from actually inside the iOS, PC, and Android games. And that little blue bar there that you can't really read at all says 445,000 tweets, which is pretty insane to think of. And the good thing is these are all opt-in. No one ever has to tweet anything from the game. They're making an active choice to, put a piece of text or to tell about the moment of the game that they were in out there, and they're doing it to people who are their followers. And if you have any followers, it's pretty much a good assumption that they're interested in something similar to you. That begins a discussion, and that discussion, which we love to call word of mouth, is probably the best way to get people interested in a game. So when I talk about Twitter, I'm like, this is my exclamation mark slide, because 445,000 is kind of ridiculous. I'd like to clarify too that tweeting high scores is not actively using social media. It's kind of a passive use of social media. It's just something that people can choose to put up. No one's really going to discuss it unless there's someone else who's following you who happens to be playing the same game at the same time and who feels some sort of competition in a game that's not inherently competitive. So I would definitely think that interesting uses of social media is mandatory. The boring stuff you can probably just skip because it won't get you any good. Still excited about that number. You really need to have a great store icon. And I've been talking about the Spell Tower icon story for many, many years because it's a perfect example of what something simple or seemingly simple can do for a project. On the left is the old one, on the right is the new one. I made the new one bigger just because it was cooler as well. But even if they're the same size, the one on the right is infinitely more readable, it is infinitely more clear, it explains the game, and it looks pretty rad. The colors are great, you have all that kind of stuff. And it's very important to think about this because on iOS, on Android, there's a pretty darn good chance that this is the first or only thing that anybody sees about your game. So if they can understand it, be interested in it, and kind of like the way it looks, the chances of them taking a risk on your project, on your title, it goes up way. And I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? If this is all you're going to see, it better be rad. It's also pretty important to have awesome promotional art. Whether it's store banners or banners on your website. These don't actually have to use any real in-game assets. They just need to capture the tone, the feeling, and provide some kind of information about your title. I love The Room's promotional art because I don't really know that it's a puzzle game. I don't really know what it's about, but I know it's about a room, and I know that room looks creepy as hell. And that's pretty darn interesting to me. Definitely need some video. This is a still from one of our Super Time Force videos. Video is, in my opinion, the best tool who wield it correctly. YouTube, as I said earlier, a massive search engine. We also put it up on other sites like Vimeo. And the importance of YouTube is growing, day by day. But what I mean by you need to have video is that you also need to have video that looks good. It needs to be encoded correctly. It needs to have audio that doesn't drop out. The titles shouldn't be in Times New Roman or Comic Sans. And there needs to be more than one of them. You should be making videos, whether it's gameplay or concise trailers, frequently and often, because it gives a chance for people to relate to your game very directly, to actually see the game in action. You also need to have someone just, oh, that's the wrong slide. That's Tim licking Greg Miller's nipple. He's air licking it, though. There's no actual contact happening right there. How do you like that, Tim? Thanks for wearing the Cappy shirt while I show this picture. So what I actually mean is you need someone who can speak well about your game. Whether it's through email, in public, over Twitter, you need somebody on your team to be able to communicate effectively and excitedly about your project. You need someone that if someone says, hey, what's your game about, they can explain it not only clearly, but in a way where people are going to get kind of excited. They can see your passion, and they can feel that this is something interesting just by talking to you. So that's I just rifled through a whole bunch of things that I think you absolutely should be doing, and I really wholeheartedly believe that if you're not doing some of these, it's one of the easiest ways to miss out on opportunities. But moving on to the part of it that's actually kind of the fun and where a lot of your power as a creator can come out in promotion, we're going to talk about the creative side or the artistic side. So I went ahead in time and took this picture of Ron giving his talk. Unfortunately, you can't actually read it, so let's flip forward here. This is the equation that Ron gave during his talk, and I believe wholeheartedly that this is completely correct. Maybe even fact, I don't know. But I really think that he hit the nail right on the head. So I'm going to try to dig into this a little bit deeper. So the specialness that Ron is talking about in promotion really, to me, is about doing unique, crazy, interesting stuff. Things that make a ton of sense for your game, but when you pitch them or when you talk to people about it, it might seem a little bit ridiculous. Another way to look at it is promotion is about telling a story worthwhile to follow. So I'm going to go through some examples of what I think good creative promotion is to hopefully kind of explain why I think this is so important, and hopefully to kind of give some ideas of what might work for promoting your own games. So I've been talking about video, and I'm going to keep talking about video. I just think video is fantastic and a very kind of important piece. So a single well-done teaser campaign can basically set up your entire promotion. But the teaser campaign must be really unique, really interesting, and kind of crazy. So I have a couple of screen grabs here from two different teasers that Frictional, the makers of Amnesia, did for their new game Soma. They're single-shot, live-action trailers that take place in a room with some composited 3D, and they tell a little bit of a backstory. And each of them has this kind of crazy, super intense moment, and it kind of sets you in this sci-fi world. It makes you understand that, from the makers of Amnesia comes something in sci-fi that's going to scare the shit out of you again. And these campaigns don't tell you anything about the game, literally. There's no gameplay. You don't know who the characters are. You don't know if the woman on the left or the guy on the right are the lead characters. Totally doesn't matter, completely inconsequential, because they have these amazing moments that capture your interest and intrigue you to keep paying attention to whatever the heck this crazy game is going to be. Now, for me, it's very important to note that these also work because they have a very clear aesthetic vision. They look cool. If this was kind of an average-looking 3D first-person shooter, it's much harder to tease that game because the immediate impact of the aesthetics are not kind of attention-grabbing enough. Also important to note that teasers are really hard to make and really hard to do right. So the more creative you get with them, the better of a chance you have of using them correctly. Oh, great, more video talk. Let's keep talking about video. So another key component of the creative side of promotion is to create unique videos, and to create lots of them, in my opinion. Over the span of the kind of 2 years that we promoted Sorcery, because we did the first look trailer for the IGF that we entered after a very short period of time, maybe 2 months of work, we created 11 different trailers, and that's not including just straight gameplay videos. Of those 11 trailers, all of them about a month of work each, give or take time. But what they did was they really focused on the tone and the atmosphere of Sword and Sorcery, rather than focusing on what the game is about. What do you do in the game? Oh, you have a sword and you're walking, and you're still walking. As Bion puts it, Bion's a musician who made a lot of the games for Pixel Junk. Well, the first time that he played Sorcery, he said, "It's just walking." So we had to try to figure out a way to promote the game that wasn't just walking, and for us was to kind of create trailers about the tone, the atmosphere, the mood, to try to fill in a mental image of what the world around Sorcery was, not just what Sorcery was. And there was a really concerted effort on our side to try to make shit look cool. Not just cool as in oh, it's visually stunning, but to make people feel like this game actually is cool, and if I play it, I think I'll feel pretty cool too. Another aspect of unique video is using video to creatively solve some of your promotional problems. So one of the problems that I have with a lot of our games is that I really love animation. Animation is much more enticing and interesting than still images. And because so much of the world sees screenshots, it gets really frustrating. And so I want to show you something. I don't actually have audio. I wonder if there's an audio plug here. I totally forgot about setting that up. Doesn't matter so much, except it kind of ruins one part of what I was going to talk about. But we'll just watch it anyways. Instead of play audio, even though the audio is pretty cool. It's disaster piece music. Everybody heard the Fez soundtrack? Yeah? Okay. It's Fez music. You love it. Oh, we're going to try to do it? Okay. Let's have fun with that. I would offer to dance, but that would be embarrassing. Everybody having a good time? How about that local sports team? Oh, perfect. While we're setting this up, I'm going to use this chance to thank everybody involved with the making of this event, because they're the best, and we've had such an amazing time here. So thanks to everyone while we're trying to... You know what, dudes? It's all good. I'll skip the audio. Yeah, I'm okay. But I don't want to sit around waiting for just to make one point. So anyways, I'll talk over this. So one of the problems that Phil and Renaud had with Fez was that in a screenshot, it wasn't easy to communicate how amazing and exciting it was to have a world that's 2D but also exists in 3D. So what they did was they created this series of what they called the long screenshot. And what they was a very slow-moving, singular video with disaster piece music playing over it that fully captured the aesthetic of the game, rather than captured one still image, missing the audio, missing Paul Robertson and Adam Saltzman animation, missing the kind of impact of how interesting it is to see the style of the game in motion. So these videos go on for approximately 2 to 3 minutes each, contain a single song from Disaster Piece, and when I watch them, I can actually feel the hair on my arm standing up because it's so poetic. And it was one of the most interesting things that I've seen done in video. And because they did a series of them, people came to expect and almost enjoy them. So they became their own kind of like standing piece of promotion by themselves. Also, I don't know about you guys, but I find screenshots to be almost disposable. They're very quick to like scroll through, like, oh, that's cool, cool, okay, that's great, that's great. The long screenshot requires you, if you're interested, to sit and watch for 3 minutes. And that's much more of an investment and much more kind of capturing that piece of your brain, or the mind share, as I said before. Another really amazing creative way to get your game out there and promote your game is via live streams and Let's Play videos. Giving YouTube Let's Play makers early access to your game, or actually getting on Twitch and playing your in-development game for anybody who's interested. On the right there is Mike Bithell, who made Thomas Was Alone. He used Let's Plays greatly, and he also decided that he was going to announce his new game Volume on a live stream. Now, the best part about it, did anybody see the Volume announcement live stream? Maybe, probably not. There wasn't that many people there. But basically, he had a whole bunch of guests, and they couldn't get any of the microphones to work, and then the video dropped out, and it was this kind of giant mess. But the more of a mess it created, the more people were actually wanting to come on and see the mess that was happening. And because Mike was just kind of cool with it happening and didn't freak out and didn't worry about it, didn't cancel it, just kind of said, okay, I'm going to go with it, he ended up actually generating more views of his kind of train wreck of a game announcement. And I had a chance to content directors from Twitch, and what he told me is the most important when you're live streaming. People don't want playing, talking about losing at their own game. They want to see the game breaking. They want to see the stream dropping out and you swearing about the stream dropping out, because that's reality, and that's breaking down barriers between the people who are interested and the people who are making. This one is a little bit challenging because it actually requires being at public demos, but I really believe in the power of public demos because they provide both play testing and promotion at the same time. creating unique public demos is an amazing way to get people to write about and talk about your game. Did anybody hear about the Stanley Parable demo? Which is pretty telling. For those of you that didn't hear about it, basically Davey, who made Stanley Parable, didn't want people to spoil the game, so he made a standalone, separate demo with content that was similar to the game, kind of put you in the game without putting you in the actual levels. And so you'd wait in line for 20 minutes, and then you would get to finally play the game, and you were super excited, and you start the game, and then the game would ask you to wait 20 minutes before you start playing the game. So obviously people are kind of, they stand there for a second, they look around, Davey doesn't do anything, he just kind of stands there. And after a period of time, people get frustrated and they just start walking around. And they can see on the other side of a wall a big room that they want to get to, so they start trying to figure out a way to get to it. They're knocking at the door, they're trying to open the door, they're trying to open the door. And finally the narrator comes in and says, okay, fine, I'll let you go into the next room. And in the next room is basically a micro version of the game. It introduces you to the amazing kind of puzzle element of the Stanley Parable right when you finally break through that door. And it's an amazing piece of kind of creative promotion because everybody at Penny Arcade Expo and tons of press and a lot of developers as well were all talking about it on Twitter and everywhere else. And I mean, it made its way all the way down here and everybody obviously reads all the sites, so it got out there very well. Going really, really niche in your game design is amazing promotion. This is something that Zach talked about, and also what Ron talked about, is finding those really small groups of people that you are certain are interested in your game. That within itself is promoting your game. If you, the game on the right is an iOS game called Forget Me Not, which is like a Pac-Man inspired roguelike, which like seems pretty darn ultra niche to me. And it was quite successful, as was Dungelot, another weird take on a roguelike. And to me, roguelike is still a very niche genre. But just by making those games and explaining what they are, it kind of piques the curiosity of people who are super passionate about that genre. And choosing to work in that niche really works as great promotion. Another strange one that works extremely well to promote your game is pricing it creatively. Now, Zach mentioned not thinking too much about pricing, and I totally agree with that. But there is space within which that you can do some kind of interesting stuff with the pricing of your game. So on the left is Frozen Synapse, a super amazing tactical multiplayer game. And they decided to sell 2 copies of their game for $20. And 2 for $20 is the only way that you can buy the game. You can't buy a single copy of the game. You can only buy 2 copies, one for you and one for whoever you want to play it with. And the beauty of that is that everybody who was making multiplayer games just kind of sat there and said, holy crap, that's the best way to get 2 people to play my game. Worst case scenario, they'll matchmake with each other and they'll have a great time. So it was amazing promotion for their game, and not only did journalists write about it, but players really resonated, and it did extremely well. Another piece of amazing creative pricing promotion, and this is post-launch, is when Ron and Kyle put World of Goo on sale for pay whatever you want. And we had never really seen this before. No one had ever decided to sell their game for any price. And it really resonated as well. It was an amazingly huge news story. It kind of spawned Humble Bundle, an entirely separate business. And what it did was create this idea that, like, one, Ron and Kyle really care about their consumers, and they really want people to play this game. So it had this huge goodwill feeling. And what they also did was they told people who pirated the game, this is a great chance for you, if you enjoyed the game but you paid $0 for it, just toss us 50 cents or whatever. It doesn't really matter. But it's a great opportunity to kind of clear your pirate conscience, which is a hilarious thing to ask because most people who download games do it for very different reasons. But it totally works. And that generated a lot of kind of amazing both press but also direct to people who care about games promotion. So I spoke about ultra niche games, but also super creative games or games doing something in a space where no one's ever done it before works fantastically too. Yearwalk is a Swedish folk first-person horror game. That's really weird, and it also was super successful. Another key thing is to think about what cool is. Cool is mostly defined by Western culture because we're the primary consumers of video games. And that's a quote from Ian Bogost. And it says, "Hundreds is cool. Like all cool things, it makes you cool by being near it, by operating it." And another example of that is Cliff Bleszinski calling Sword and Sorcery the first real hipster game. And that actually got retweeted like 300 times and was amazing promotion for us. But the idea of creating cool hipster games actually works as promotion because, like it or not, people kind of want to be hip. Final part that I want to kind of talk about is building studio loyalty. Hopefully everybody here gets a chance to build a portfolio of games rather than just a single game. And studio loyalty is, in my opinion, the best form of promotion that exists. It's going to create a group of people that will passionately speak about your studio and any game that you make as long as it doesn't look like garbage, to everyone that will possibly listen. And what we found at Cappy is that the people who are interested in our games, who are passionate about our games, and who believe in the type of games that we make are the ones who do the best job at promoting their game. I always look at it that every effort that we put in might create 100 sales. But every time someone talks about the game passionately to one of their friends, they might, by proxy, spill out to 100, to 1,000, to 10,000. So the idea of like building one fan as opposed to 100 people who know about the game is super important. So how do you do this? What are some kind of methods by which you can create interesting promotions? So the first and one of the most important is focusing on the tone of your game rather than what your game is. What is the day-to-day or moment-to-moment action in your game? The tone of your game is what will kind of define everything that comes out of it. How you take screenshots, how you create video, what you're actually communicating to people should all come from the tone and the atmosphere of your project, not from like, oh, it's a platformer, so I should obviously show jumping. That's not very interesting and it's very hard to latch onto. But the tone of the platformer, so in the case of Super Time Force, it's really jokey and it doesn't take itself very seriously, and it's also about time travel. So we focus on those elements rather than focusing on just the act of jumping and shooting. The second piece is having an actual vision for your promotion. So everyone who's making a game has a vision for that game. They know what they want that game to look like. They can see it in their mind's eye. I think it's very important for developers to do the same thing with promotion, to have a vision for what you see your trailers looking like, what you see your screenshots and your website, and even your Let's Play videos looking like. And that vision is very important to us at the studio. Both myself and Chris Piotrowski, our creative director, went to film school together. So in film school, we made a lot of films together. He would direct and I would kind of produce and kind of edit. And through that process, we came to realize that the act of creating an idea for something as small as a short film or a trailer and seeing it through to the final goal required somebody to sit there and say, no, this is what it should look like, or yes, this should look exactly like this because the game looks like this. And that act of maintaining a promotional vision is, I think, one of the main reasons why people really latched on to the promotion for Sword and Sorcery. Another key component is sharing elements between the game and your promotion. The last time that I said this in a talk, people looked at me like, duh, that's kind of dumb, obviously. But so many times I see developers not carrying in-game art into promotional art. So that means something like fonts, like color palettes, like key phrases or words. So in the Sword and Sorcery videos, we always use words like mythopoetic and cosmic, and these strange old-timey words that don't really mean much, but totally, when you think about them after having played the game, fit perfectly. Even nowadays, when I say mythopoetic, to me that's like summarizing Sword and Sorcery, and it's in all of our promotion. It also meant that we could go back to everything that we were making and look at, and see, like, does this fit? Are the fonts correct? Is the kind of the overall desaturated colors correct? And those shared elements kind of ensured that that would happen. You should be very personal about your promotion. As independent developers, we actually have this amazing opportunity to leapfrog over AAA developers because we can actually speak for ourselves. We can be ourselves through our promotion and through our games. And the story by which you create your games and by which you got into games is something that is worth promoting in itself. So I asked Marty from IGN what he thought was very important about creative promotion for independent studios. And he wrote me this giant email, which I'm actually going to ask him if I can share. And if I can share it, I'll put it up on the CAPI website. But this is a quote that really grabbed me. Honestly, the most important thing for me is for the developers I'm working with to be open and genuine. So be authentic in your promotion. Trying to sell aspects of your game that are not that cool to you is going to come off as kind of a bit of a lie. And the beautiful thing is that nowadays, through the internet, people have the most phenomenal lie detectors and are willing to spread the knowledge or the idea that you are lying everywhere possible. So being authentic is not only important personally or from a moral standpoint, but it's also important to make sure you're not kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Good promotion is honestly explaining what excites you about your game rather than trying to convince people that your game is exciting. Okay, I got a giant quote here, and I apologize for the giant quote. Humans are simple creatures. We all want love, we all want acceptance, and we all want to feel connected with others. Creating authentic, organic experiences that allow for these base needs to be satisfied translates into success and promotion. And that's from one of the founders of IM8-bit, one of the coolest and most creative PR studios that exist. So basically what that means is, do what feels right. Give people an authentic, and by organic, I believe that Amanda is actually meaning kind of easily grown out of your beliefs, opportunity to learn about your game. You'll notice that Ron also used Simpsons references in his talks, but I did that before I knew that Ron was using Simpsons. And here's another one. A very important thing to remember is promotion does not mean getting attention. If you're out there waving a giant flag or wearing a sandwich board or dressing up really funny, just try to get anybody to notice you, you're going about it the wrong way. You're promoting the wrong things about yourself and about your projects. You need to really find a good way to let the project speak for yourself and then authentically and personally and with vision speak for your game. Here's another quote from Marty. There's absolutely nothing worse than when it seems like a developer or PR is trying too hard. So please, whatever you do, don't try too hard. Be honest, be authentic, capture the tone of the game, and make sure that when you start out to when you finish, you have a vision for the promotion of the game that you're making. Now let's ask some questions. I really like the walk over to the question couch. Just going to saunter.
Ya saben, acérquense por acá.
If you can plug it in, I can do that for sure. Show one of the. Okay. Do you, if you can get audio running, then I'm golden. I have all the files on my computer, I think.
Hey, so this I think is more of an issue here than than in the States. But when promoting a game through Twitter, the thing is, what market language we should be focused on? Because when we create a Twitter account, should we tweet in both languages? I mean, Spanish and English, or create two separate accounts?
I think it would be if it was my choice, and this is something we did for Sword and Sorcery in the English versus the Japanese, is that because we did a full Japanese version of Sword and Sorcery, and we actually had separate Twitter accounts for those. And a lot of the content that we tweeted about was shared between both, but because there are some cultural differences, because we want to use some slang, some words that might not be easy for people who are not great at English to use, we decided to create a second Twitter account and do both at the same time. And it was a lot of extra work, but Twitter is relatively easy to use. So, I mean, I would say that like a huge portion of your sales are going to come from the United States. So English is sort of like, if you want to try to start talking to fans, you'll find fans in the United States. And although a lot of them will speak Spanish as well, I think having multiple avenues is very important. If you want to be speaking to the Argentinian gaming population and you want to be speaking to the English-speaking, I think it's important to share information across, but make sure that you're doing it in their native language. That was very challenging for us because we realized we just couldn't do that. And the only reason that we could do it for Sword and Sorcery because we had friends who were extremely good translators who worked on Metal Gear and Fire Emblem and so on, that were good friends of ours that offered to do this for us. And we could trust them with it. But had we not done that, we would only be talking in English for Sorcery because it's such a difficult game for us to translate.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
I wanted to ask regarding the creative process when the team wrote all the text for Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery, and if the creative decisions taken with the text were influenced by the decision to integrate Twitter to the game.
Yes. So originally we were going to make the game entirely integrated with Facebook instead of Twitter, which would have been a catastrophic mistake because nobody ever lets anything tweet out or go to Facebook from their games, and no one uses it. So luckily for us, Chris, our creative director, and Craig, who is Super Brothers, they decided very early on that they were going to try to do something that was kind of inspired by the way you used to talk about how you were playing Zelda, which was like, hey, did you see that crack over in the second level over there? And they wanted to use the ability to tweet out of the game as a way to kind of share information about the game with other people playing the game. So from very early on, all of the dialogue that Super Brothers wrote was written in 140 characters, which made it very difficult, but it also made it 100% certain that none of our text bubbles were more than one bubble. It was always, you never had to page. You just, every piece of text was quick and succinct and it's kind of snappy and almost easier to make it funny as well. Also interesting is that of everyone that hates Sword and Sorcery, of which there are many, most of them hate it for the text. And I think part of that is because they felt it was too brief and too written for Twitter. But that was intentional.
Thanks.
Well, I want to ask about, I see you dedicated a section to the trailers for Fest and the music behind them, and I think Sorcery was very important because of its music as well, with Jim Guthrie and such. How important was it to the game? How, in terms of design, how important was the music, and also how did you get to work with an artist like Jim Guthrie?
So it was working with Jim was amazing because where I'm from, Toronto, Jim is kind of a legend. I mean, I grew up listening to some of his music. I listened to it in university. Now More Than Ever was one of my favorite albums in like 2004 or so. So Jim was, in my opinion, the most important piece of that game. We titled the game Sword and Sorcery EP, kind of to make sure that people understood how important the music was, even in the title. Even if all they saw was the title, they would kind of wonder, like, is this a game or is this an album? When we started out, the whole idea was to create a Jim Guthrie album that you could kind of walk around in. So Jim was, the music in that game was the most important part of the game, was the most important part of the development, because Craig, Super Brothers, drew all of the backgrounds while listening to the soundtrack to the game. So Jim would create a song, send it to Super Brothers, and Super Brothers would paint an area. And so it was this flow of music, spawning art, spawning design that really built the game. And it was also probably the most important piece of our promotion as well. Of everything that everyone talked about, it was music just a little bit more important than art. And I think that that's actually the way that we think about it ourselves as well. And we've been very lucky. We're working with Jim again on our next project, and it's kind of, it's almost surreal because he's the best guy ever, and also my wife worked with him in advertising. Like he's composed soundtracks to Indie Game the Movie and to another documentary. I mean, the man can do anything, and he was absolutely critical to both the game itself and to the promotion of the game.
Also, regarding the question about the translation of the game to Japanese, was that something intentional, like specifically for Japan, or just because you had the opportunity for that language? I mean, had you considered translating the game to other languages as well to make it as available as possible?
So I spent a lot of time. I mean, most of my job is production, business, relationship, finding out how to solve certain problems. And one of the problems that I tried to solve was how to get the game translated without losing the tone. And the problem that I bumped up against is that because I didn't know any of the translation companies or translators that I was talking to, I couldn't really be sure that they understood exactly how important the tone of the writing was, and therefore I couldn't be sure that they would capture it. And if I couldn't be sure that they would capture it, then you kind of run the risk of ruining something that I felt was critical to the game. So very early on, we kind of just resigned ourselves to the idea that it was going to be an English game. Then our friends at 8-4, who have a great podcast, if anybody likes game podcasts, we knew them very well just as friends, just as kind of guys that we hung out with at conferences or that came to Toronto to visit us. They had a bit of extra time and they said, hey, do you want to let us translate Sorcery? And because they were our friends and because we knew their history and because we knew how passionate they were about the project, we trusted them. And then they came to us and asked us if they could rename the game for the Japanese audience. And we got a little scared, but we let them do it because we trusted them. And then they asked us if they could rewrite some of the tweets or rewrite some of the text to include a hidden puzzle within the tweets in Japanese. And we trusted them. And it turned out to be an amazing experience. But for us, it was the only reason that that game didn't get translated was not for desire, but for just, it meant that we would have run the risk of doing something that would kind of hurt the game. Thanks for your questions.
Hello.
Hi.
I wanted to ask about what you said about not trying too hard, because it can happen maybe that with promotion people can the game wouldn't live up to the expectations people had about it with all the promotion, or maybe they got the wrong idea about the game. So how you can find that? How you know when it's enough? I mean, how you find that balance?
That's an extremely challenging piece of the puzzle. I think the whole authenticity side of it, like being very honest with people about what your game is, will automatically help you with that. Because I find a lot of the problems, so like I always use Dead Island as an example. Dead Island had an amazing trailer that won like an award for advertising at Cannes, and it was completely and entirely different than the actual game. And I played the game and I enjoyed the game. It was actually surprisingly fun, but I felt like I was being shown something that was entirely different than what I was going to play. When I'm playing the game, I'm bashing a zombie on the head. That's all I'm doing. But in the trailer, it's this beautiful rewind with a family moment of a mother getting bitten and a father trying to save his child. And to me, that's not really authentic, right? That's trying to find the most bombastic and exciting way to talk about something that is much simpler. So I think it's very important that independent developers don't tread that water because it is very dangerous. And it also means that when you're being honest with yourself and honest with your team, and what we do a lot when we make trailers or screenshots is we pass them to the whole rest of the team before we send them out and have 20 other people watch it. And hopefully you work somewhere where if someone is like, you say that we have 35 levels, but 5 of those levels are really not levels, so we should say 30. That's a great, like somebody should feel confident enough to say that in your critiquing process. So for us, a lot of that comes from, well, for us, a lot of it is I don't really know, and all of it is I do what feels good, and I look at it from a like, I feel good about this, I don't feel like I'm lying. But a lot of it is just kind of, you do your best, and sometimes it's a miss. We did a series, or we did an animated trailer for Super Time Force that apparently I might actually show, and it looks nothing like the game. It barely has any of the game in it, and we felt it was very authentic. But there's a certain small number of people on Twitter that were asking us, like, "Oh my gosh, is the game actually going to look like this?" And we had to kind of like just, you know, honestly explain to them, like, no, this is just a cool cartoon that we made to kind of show you what the game feels like, from atmosphere and from the jokes and so on. And I think that helped, but overall, like, in summary, it's really bloody hard.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I want to ask about social media Reddit for promotion games, for promote games.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Reddit, do you know it? Reddit.
Sorry, I'm totally...
R-E-D-D-I-T. Reddit.
Rivet.
Where you read, you know, the website where you just share links and post them.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, Reddit. Yes, sorry, I was totally blanking on. Okay. I think Reddit is amazingly powerful and super dangerous. It's the same thing as a lot of forums like NeoGAF, where there's extremely passionate, active gamers who will really appreciate you speaking honestly about your game, answering questions. But they're also very much like Twitter in the sense that if you slip and say something wrong, or you don't explain yourself quite accurately enough, or you break one of their rules, there is a chance that it kind of comes back and they start, you know, nipping at your toes. But I mean, I look at a game like Bastion by Supergiant, and they've been very open in saying that Reddit had a huge, played a huge part in their success. I mean, Minecraft in a lot of ways lives on Reddit. So I think, like for me, that's the side. I know Twitter, I can deal with NeoGAF. Reddit, I am very inexperienced, but I'm trying very hard to learn because I think, well, first of all, it's the front page of the internet. It's one of the most visited sites, and it's an amazing opportunity to promote your games. But it's also, there's just so many people there that are in our indie games channel that are interested in these games, that having interesting discussions with them outside of promoting your games, it's kind of fun, and I kind of enjoy it. So I think I would definitely tread lightly, or at least that's what I'm doing because I'm not so familiar with it. Whereas with NeoGAF, I've been on NeoGAF for 9 years now, 8 years now, so I'm very familiar with it, and I know how to work the system. I know how to explain my game without sounding like I'm selling it, and I know how to honestly speak about it without feeding the trolls, as they say. If anybody is very active in Reddit, I didn't have it in my slides, and I totally should have. So thank you for asking about it. Reddit's kind of super powerful. So if you're familiar with it, definitely put that in the creative side or even in the mandatory side.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
So, how good of a promotion and sales tool post-release, obviously, is the Humble Bundle, and how hard it is to get in it?
So I mean, the way that it worked for us, and I believe the way that it works for most games, is that people at Humble play a lot of games and are very active in the independent game community. And if they see a game they think fits really well into a bundle, they'll go after it. They're doing much more frequent bundles now, but I still think it's a tough nut to crack. And for us, like, because we were successful on iOS, it led to an easier entry into something like Humble Bundle. Really, the best way to get into Humble Bundle is to promote your game really well and be successful. I mean, that sounds like a terrible non-answer, but if you look at the history of games in Humble Bundles, most of them are predominantly games that already have reached an audience. And in some cases, that audience isn't even that big, but they've really spoken to that audience and got that audience very excited and active in their game. So I would definitely recommend like understanding who you're promoting your game to, because if you can get that whole group of that 1% of the entire game community that's interested to be very interested, then there's a better chance of seeing whether it's Humble Bundle or getting on Steam via Greenlight or skipping Greenlight or getting Steam promotion. All of that feeds through how well I think you speak to your community and how active you are with them.
Thanks.
How was to interact with the people of Humble Bundle, with the executives, and what did you learn from being on Humble Bundle?
So, because the Will, who is one of the guys who works in Humble Bundle, was the guy who contacted me about putting Sword and Sorcery in it. And we were talking about, we were really interested in doing a PC version, but we hadn't really committed to it yet. And so Will sent me an email, got my email through Ron probably, and said, hey, I'm Will, I really liked Sorcery, read a lot about it. What do you think about doing a PC version? Do you need any help? And it was just kind of like not really that pushy or anything, and it wasn't, do you want to be in a Humble Bundle? It was just like, hey, what are you thinking about? And at that point in time, we had decided, yeah, maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't. And having that kind of like, having somebody out of the blue who has that kind of promotional power asking you about it, it was like, oh, okay, we'll do a PC version. And because Will was one of the motivating factors for us to do a PC version, I kept keeping in touch with them, and constant communication was very important. Him and I ended up becoming friends because we spoke so frequently, even before we really had decided whether or not we were going to do a bundle. They're extremely busy. They do so many bundles so frequently between the weekly sale, the Android bundles, the regular bundles, the AAA bundles, the ebook bundles, the music bundles, and they're only like 30 people, not even. So they're very busy. So my relationship working with them was extremely positive, with the kind of caveat that you have to understand how much they're doing. But because of working with them, I actually got to become friends with some of them, and that's kind of the fringe benefit of it, of doing anything in the kind of independent games community, is when you work with someone else, there's a pretty good chance that if the work relationship is good, they're going to be your friends as well. So the working with them was very positive. It's kind of like working with another indie developer, really. They do a lot of the work themselves. There's not a lot of people. A lot of them are learning as they go, or have learned as they've gone. So I felt very at home working with them. What was the second question, sorry?
What did you learn from
what did I learn? That Humble Bundle is the best it's the best way to sell your game. I don't know. It was actually, my wife and I were traveling while the bundle was going on. And I learned that I get obsessed with watching numbers go up. So my wife asked me to only look at the numbers a couple of times a day, because I would just sit on my phone while we were having coffee and look at the numbers, and drink my coffee and look at the numbers. So I learned that I'm very interested in watching numbers go up one by one. Seriously though, I learned that alternative business models, so like in my slide I was mentioning how the world of Goosell kind of led to a new business model. Alternative business models created by independent developers I think are going to become a more powerful thing. I think Humble Bundle is only one of many ways that us as developers can figure out a way that's different than put game on store shelf or put game on Steam to sell our games. And I'm personally very interested in it, and being a part of Humble only kind of piqued that interest a little more.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Hello. Thanks for coming to Argentina.
Thanks for and thank you for showing me around.
You're welcome. And the talk was great and very complete. I was thinking a question because it was hard. How long do you think it's best to begin with the promotion of the game? Because it's hard to keep the interest up. So how are releasing a game?
So that we used to work was until the game looks as good as we think it can look, don't show anything. And that used to be great because then anybody only ever saw the perfect version of our game. But then Twitch and YouTube and other developers out there started showing way earlier, and then it got to a point where, you know, people were starting to show their game. They would start at a game jam, they would work for 3 days, and then they would start showing their game because they knew they were going to turn it into something else. And so for Super Time Force, we started promoting the game after 30 days of work. So we've been promoting that game kind of not so consistently about 2 years now. And it's been extremely challenging, but part of the reason why it was challenging was because we didn't do Twitch early enough. We didn't find other avenues to promote it early enough. We're just starting to live stream. We're just starting to talk to people who do Let's Plays on YouTube. We're just starting to like try to think of those really alternate methods that we're not already reaching. But to answer your question, I think it really does depend on the type of game. I think it's a lot harder to maintain interest in a run-and-gun platformer for 2 years than it is in a multiplayer game or a procedurally generated game or a survival game or a horror game or games that are very kind of like specific rather than a game that's very broad. I would use Xenoclash as an example of a game that I think that had Ace Team started now, they could have started showing that game very early. They could have shown how they made the combat go from very simple to feeling very impactful and very visceral. And that would have been something that like people could follow along. And I think that would work very well. I think there's certain styles of game. So like right now, Vlambeer are showing like every other day the development of Nuclear Throne. And it's procedurally generated, and it's super weird, and they can change stuff in 5 seconds because JW can change stuff very fast. And I think it works great for that. Whereas for other things like an RPG or even for Sorcery, it was extremely difficult for us to show it early because it's narrative, it's very linear. And at a certain point, you're going to show everyone all of the content that the game even has. So I would definitely say it's you know,
it's relative.
It depends on the game, but it's probably earlier than you think.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here. The conference was great. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much for coming.
I'm a very huge fan of Clash of Heroes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's
all right.
Amazing game.
One person, I love it.
Oh, nobody likes it? No.
Oh, no, it did not sell very well.
Oh, really?
Oh, no.
Well, I think I sold, well, this was my question. It's going to be relevant now. I bought it on like all platforms because I really like the game.
Thanks, man.
And that's like very, I've read that that's common for possibly the guys who did Bastion, from Super Giant Games, that happens as well, that maybe people who are very huge fans of a property, they get it on all their platforms, even if the game is exactly the same.
Definitely.
Is that very common? Do you count on that when you release something? I know it's like a very small percentage, but...
we definitely saw that on Clash of Heroes, although it was like the teeny tiny group of people.
Yeah.
And then we didn't do the iOS or the Android version, so I don't know if people bought that or not. But for Sword and Sorcery, we definitely saw that. A core group of really passionate fans that bought it both on iOS and on PC, or on Android and on PC, predominantly because they wanted to play it on the go, but they also wanted to see it on a big screen. We don't count on that. The way that we work is that we build a game for a primary platform. So in the case of Sorcery, it was iOS. In the case of Super Time Force, it's Xbox Live Arcade. And then after release, we see how it does. We look at sales numbers. We look at the kind of way that people speak about it. We see how passionate people are about the game. We see how well it reviews. We see how willing people are to ask about ports to other platforms. And then we decide what the next step is. We always think about something like Steam because it's such an amazing platform. So that's kind of like, the assumption is that if this game does well, we'd really like to bring it to another platform, and then another, and maybe even a fourth. And I think that for us, that's the best way, because then we don't have anybody at our team that's working both on the game and on porting the game at the same time. We can all focus on making the game good. And then if it works out, and when we play it, we feel confident in it, then we can start taking it to other platforms. And I think porting is an amazing piece of promotion as well.
Yeah. One last question. Is the Clash of Heroes didn't sell very well in general, or it didn't sell very well on iOS?
I don't know about iOS or Android because somebody else did it. We didn't have any role in it. But it wasn't, I mean, it didn't do badly, but it did pretty poorly on DS, and then on Xbox Live Arcade, I think it did okay. And then we launched right before PlayStation Network got hacked, so that probably hurt PSN a bit. But yeah, it was
mild.
It was a little bit sad that it didn't sell better, but I totally understand why it didn't sell better. So.
Okay. I don't.
But I still love. I'm still super proud of the game, and I would do the same. I would make the same game under the same circumstances every time because I'm super proud of it.
I would as well. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, to close, do you think we could see Super Time Force or Below's promotional video?
Sure. Yeah. Danielle asked me to show some video because he thought it would be cool, and I like showing our stuff, so I also think it's cool. Actually, I should move that. If you see anything on my monitor, oh, this is going to be fun. How do I'm going to, mouse. Can we switch it over? I like this. This is a captive audience for, oh my gosh, this is going to be so fun to do here. If you see anything that you shouldn't see, like me downloading a ton of stuff for the, okay, you can't see that, that's good. Cappy projects, Super Time Force, where would it be? Jeez, it's got to be somewhere on here. Sorry, guys. I am ill-prepared for this. Do you want to hold this for a second? While
Search for it. In a few minutes, I'll say a few things to the guys. Bueno, ahora después que veamos el video, vamos a terminar. Recuerden devolver los auriculares para recuperar sus documentos. Pero apenas terminé, vamos a hablar una cosita más, así como para cerrar, así que no se vayan corriendo. Va a ser 5 minutos. Y no sé qué más decir para estirar. How are you doing?
Well, yeah, it's going to look whatever.
If we actually can get on the internet, I can download it and we can stream it. Maybe.
Okay, probably not. Well, if we can do it, it's fine. What? All right, we can do it some other time. It doesn't matter.
Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties, but if you Google Super Time Force, you can totally see the trailer, and it'll be awesome. Okay, I just want to say thank you to everyone who came out. Thanks. have been kind of raving over how rad you dudes are. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it.